The champagne glass shattered against the marble floor, sending crystal shards skittering across the pristine ballroom of the Oriental Hotel in Lagos. Chidi Okonkwo's hand was still raised, trembling with rage, as the woman in the simple black waitress uniform stumbled backward, her cheek already blooming red from where he'd struck her. "You clumsy fool." Chidi's voice boomed across the wedding reception, silencing the Afrobeat music and 300 guests mid-celebration. "Do you know how much this tuxedo costs? More than you'll earn in a year." The waitress, a small, thin woman who looked to be in her late 50s, pressed her hand to her face, eyes glistening with tears she refused to let fall. Wine dripped from Chidi's white sleeve where she'd accidentally spilled it while serving his table. His new bride, Amara, sat frozen beside him in her elaborate white lace gown and gold jewelry, her mouth open in shock. "Chidi, please." Amara started to stand, reaching for his arm. "Stay out of this." He shook her off, his expensive Italian leather shoes crunching on broken glass as he advanced on the trembling woman. "These useless workers think they can ruin a man's wedding day and get away with it. Where's the manager? I want her fired. Now." The domestic betrayal that would unravel Chidi's entire world had just begun, though he didn't know it yet. The waitress straightened slowly, her dignity somehow intact despite the red handprint on her dark skin. She looked directly at him with eyes that held something he couldn't quite place. Not fear, but something deeper. Recognition, perhaps. Or pity. "I apologize, sir," she said quietly, her voice steady despite everything. "It was an accident." "An accident?" Chidi laughed bitterly, turning to address his guests, Lagos's elite, dressed in their finest aso-ebi and designer suits. "An accident that this nobody, this common waitress, ruins the most important day of my life? Someone get her out of my sight before I—" "Before you what?" The voice came from the back of the room. Amara's father, Chief Okafor, pushed through the crowd, his traditional ibada flowing behind him. His face was dark with fury. "Before you hit her again, Chidi? At your own wedding?" Chidi's confidence faltered for just a moment. "Chief, with all respect, this woman." "That woman," Chief Okafor said, his voice dropping to something dangerous, "has more worth than you'll ever understand." The ballroom had gone completely silent. Even the hired photographer had stopped clicking. Amara stood now, her hands clasped together, her beautiful face crumbling with an emotion Chidi couldn't read. She was looking at the waitress with tears streaming down her cheeks, ruining her professional makeup. "Amara?" Chidi turned to his bride, confused. "What's wrong with you?" The waitress, still holding her reddening cheek, met Amara's eyes across the room. Something unspoken passed between them, heavy with meaning and years of secrets. The older woman gave the slightest shake of her head, a warning, but Amara's face had already transformed from shock into something harder. Something that looked like rage. "What's wrong with me?" Amara's voice was barely a whisper, but in the silence, everyone heard it. "What's wrong with me is that I just watched my husband beat a woman at our wedding reception. A woman who—" She stopped, her throat working. "Who what?" Chidi demanded, his own anger returning. This was his day being ruined, his celebration being destroyed by a clumsy servant and his bride's inexplicable tears. Chief Okafor moved to stand beside the waitress, his hand gentle on her shoulder. The gesture was protective, familiar. "Tell him, Ngozi," he said quietly. "Tell him who you are." The waitress, Ngozi, lifted her chin. Her hand dropped from her face, revealing the full damage of Chidi's blow. When she spoke, her voice carried across the ballroom with unexpected strength. "My name is Ngozi Okafor," she said. "And I'm Amara's mother." The room exploded in gasps and shocked murmurs. Chidi felt the floor tilt beneath him. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more gripping stories like this. What do you think happens next? Comment below. 3 hours earlier, Ngozi had tied the simple black apron around her waist in the hotel's staff changing room, her fingers trembling slightly as she fastened the knot. Through the walls, she could hear the sounds of preparation, the wedding planner barking orders, the band doing sound checks, caterers arranging elaborate trays of jollof rice, pepper soup, and suya. Her daughter was getting married today, and Ngozi was working as a waitress at the reception. What would you do if you had to watch your child's wedding from behind a serving tray? Hit like if family secrets have ever torn you apart, and comment below where you're watching from. Auntie Ngozi, you ready? Blessing, another waitress, poked her head through the door. She was young, maybe 22, with kind eyes. They're starting to seat the guests. Ngozi nodded, smoothing down her uniform. It wasn't how she'd imagined seeing Amara married, not in her wildest dreams or worst nightmares. But this was the choice she'd made 23 years ago, and she'd learned to live with the consequences of that domestic betrayal of her own heart. The ballroom was transformed into something from a fairy tale. White roses and gold decorations everywhere, crystal chandeliers catching the Lagos sunlight streaming through floor-to-ceiling windows. The kind of wedding that cost more than Ngozi would earn in 5 years of working at the Oriental Hotel. She'd taken this job 6 months ago specifically because she knew Amara and Chidi had booked their reception here. Just to be close. Just to see her daughter happy, even from a distance. Can you believe it? Another server, Emeka, whispered as they stood against the wall, waiting for guests to arrive. Chief Okafor's daughter getting married. I heard the groom's family owns half the banks in Lagos. Ngozi said nothing. She knew exactly who Chidi Okonkwo was. She'd done her research. Old money, Oxford educated, 35 years old with a reputation for ruthlessness in business. His family owned commercial properties across Victoria Island and Lekki. The kind of man who expected the world to bow before him. The kind of man who reminded her painfully of Amara's father. The guests began arriving in waves. Lagos's elite in their most expensive attire, women in elaborate geli head wraps and designer asoebi, men in traditional agbada or sharp Italian suits. The air filled with the scent of expensive perfume and the sound of Yoruba, Igbo, and English mixing together in animated conversation. Then Amara entered for the reception, and Ngozi's breath caught in her throat. Her daughter was breathtaking. The wedding gown was a masterpiece of lace and beading, the kind you saw in bridal magazines. Amara's natural hair was styled in an elegant updo, adorned with small gold accessories. Her makeup was flawless, highlighting the high cheekbones and full lips she'd inherited from Ngozi herself. But it was Amara's eyes that made Ngozi's heart clench. Even from across the room, even through all the smiles and laughter, she could see it. Her daughter wasn't entirely happy. There was something forced about her brightness, something brittle in her smile. A mother knows. Start serving the top table, the head server instructed. Carefully. Chief Okafor doesn't tolerate mistakes. Ngozi's hands shook as she lifted the wine bottle. She'd been so careful to avoid direct contact with Amara and her family all day, staying in the background, just another face in uniform. But now she had to approach the bridal table, had to get close to the daughter she'd given up, the man who'd forced her to make that choice, and the husband who had no idea who she was. Chidi was laughing loudly at something, his hand possessive on Amara's shoulder. He had that confident air of someone who'd never been denied anything in his life. His groomsmen surrounded him, all equally polished, equally entitled. Ngozi approached silently, professionally. She'd served thousands of guests in her years of domestic work. She knew how to be invisible. But as she reached to pour wine into Chidi's glass, someone bumped her from behind, another server rushing past with a tray. The bottle tilted, and red wine splashed across Chidi's pristine white sleeve. Time seemed to slow. Ngozi saw his face transform from surprise to fury in an instant. Saw his hand come up. Felt the sharp crack of his palm against her cheek before her mind could process what was happening. The pain was secondary to the shock, to the humiliation of being struck in front of 300 people, in front of her daughter. But more than that, she saw something in that moment of violence that made her blood run cold. She'd seen that same casual cruelty before, in Amara's father, all those years ago. The same belief that some people were simply less human, less worthy of respect. Her daughter had married a man just like Chief Okafor. And now, as she stood in that ballroom with everyone staring, as Amara cried and Chief Okafor moved through the crowd with murder in his eyes, Ngozi realized that all her years of silence and sacrifice were about to shatter like that champagne glass on the floor. Because Chief Okafor was about to tell the truth she'd kept hidden for 23 years. The truth about who she was. About why she'd disappeared from Amara's life when her daughter was just 2 years old. The truth about the real domestic betrayal, and it wasn't hers. "My name is Ngozi Okafor," she heard herself say, the words feeling both foreign and right on her tongue. "And I'm Amara's mother." Chidi's face went from red to white. His mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. Amara collapsed back into her chair, her wedding gown pooling around her like melted snow. "Mama?" The word came out broken, disbelieving. And Chief Okafor, the man who'd taken everything from Ngozi 23 years ago, put his arm around her shoulders with a familiarity that made several guests gasp in confusion. "Yes," he said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. "Ngozi is Amara's biological mother. And the woman I've loved for 26 years. The woman I've been searching for since the day my first wife forced her to leave our home." The revelation hung in the air like smoke. Someone's phone flashed. Already recording, already spreading this scandal across Lagos social media. Chidi found his voice, strangled and desperate. "This is insane. This is... Amara, tell me this isn't true." But Amara wasn't looking at him anymore. She was staring at Ngozi with eyes full of 23 years of questions, abandonment, and desperate hope. Hit subscribe and drop a comment. Have you ever discovered a family secret that changed everything? We want to hear from you. The hotel manager arrived with security, but Chief Okafor waved them away with a single gesture. Money and power spoke loudly in Lagos, and the chief had both in abundance. "Everyone out," he commanded. "The reception is over." The guests didn't need to be told twice. They gathered their belongings in a flurry of whispered speculation and poorly concealed phone cameras. The scandal would be all over social media within minutes, the Okonkwo Okafor wedding that had exploded into chaos. Ngozi could already imagine the headlines, the blog posts, the WhatsApp group conversations that would dissect every moment. Within 15 minutes, the ballroom had emptied except for the immediate family. Chidi's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Okonkwo, elegant and horrified, stood near the exit with his groomsmen. Amara's bridesmaids had been ushered out by the wedding planner. Only the core remained: Chidi, Amara, Chief Okafor, and Ngozi. And the weight of 23 years of secrets. Amara hadn't moved from her chair. Her hands gripped the edge of the table, knuckles pale against her dark skin. Mascara tracked down her cheeks in uneven lines. The beautiful bride from an hour ago had transformed into something raw and wounded. "Someone explain," she said quietly. Too quietly. "Someone explain to me right now why my mother, who I was told died in a car accident when I was 2, is standing in this room wearing a waitress uniform." Ngozi took a step forward, but Chief Okafor's hand on her arm stopped her. "Let me," he said softly. Then louder, to Amara, "Your mother didn't die. My wife, your stepmother, she gave Ngozi a choice. Leave and never contact us again, or watch me lose everything. My business, my reputation, my position. Victoria made sure Ngozi understood that staying would destroy me." "Victoria?" Amara's voice cracked on the name. "Mummy Victoria, who raised me? Who sang me lullabies and taught me to tie geli? That Victoria?" Chief Okafor nodded, his face heavy with old guilt. "She couldn't have children of her own. When I had an affair with Ngozi, she was our housemaid then, and Ngozi became pregnant with you. Victoria was devastated. But she agreed to raise you as her own on one condition, that Ngozi disappear completely." The ballroom felt airless. Ngozi forced herself to speak, her voice stronger now. "I was 19 when I came to work for your father. Young, stupid, and dazzled by a man who should have known better. When I got pregnant, Victoria made me sign papers. Legal documents saying I gave up all parental rights. She paid me 200,000 naira and told me if I ever tried to contact you, she'd make sure I never worked in Lagos again. That your father would go to prison for statutory rape." "You were 19? Amara's head snapped toward her father. "She was 19 and you were, what? 40. 37, Chief Okafor said, and had the grace to look ashamed. I'm not defending what I did. It was wrong. I was married, she was young, and in my employ. But Amara, I loved her. I still love her. Chidi, who'd been silent through all of this, suddenly laughed. The sound was ugly, bitter. This is perfect. Absolutely perfect. My wedding day ruined because my father-in-law couldn't keep his trousers zipped and my mother-in-law was a servant. He turned to Amara. Did you know about this? Is this why you insisted on having the reception here? How dare you? Amara's voice was ice. I found out my mother was alive 3 weeks ago. The confession dropped like a bomb. Everyone turned to stare at her. Amara stood slowly, her wedding gown rustling. She looked at Ngozi with eyes full of pain and anger. I was going through Mummy Victoria's things after she died last year. Found the papers. Found the photographs she'd hidden. Found evidence of the payments my father kept making to a woman named Ngozi Okafor for 20 years. She laughed, the sound close to breaking. You want to know what I did, Chidi? I hired a private investigator. Found out my mother was alive and working as a waitress in Lagos. Living in a one-room apartment in Surulere. Struggling while my father lived in a mansion in Ikoyi, and I grew up with everything I ever wanted except the truth. Ngozi felt tears streaming down her face. Amara. Don't. Amara held up her hand. I came to see you. Did you know that? 2 weeks ago. I stood outside your apartment building for an hour, trying to decide if I should knock. Trying to decide if I could forgive you for choosing money over me. It wasn't about money. Ngozi's voice broke. I was a teenager with no family, no education beyond secondary school. Victoria threatened to destroy your father, but more than that, she convinced me you'd be better off without me. That I had nothing to offer you except poverty and shame. I thought I was doing what was best. Best. Amara's laugh was sharp with betrayal. You thought it was best to let me believe you were dead? To let me grow up thinking my mother didn't love me enough to stay alive. The words hung in the air like shards of glass. Ngozi had no defense against them, because they were true. Every word was true. Chief Okafor moved toward his daughter. Amara, please understand. Stay away from me. Amara's voice was deadly quiet. Both of you stay away from me. She turned to Chidi, her husband of exactly 4 hours. And you put your hands on my mother at our wedding. You hit a woman old enough to be your mother over spilled wine. Chidi's face flushed. I didn't know who she was. How could I have? Does it matter? Amara's voice rose, echoing off the ballroom walls. Does it matter who she was? Would it have been acceptable to hit her if she was just a waitress? Just a nobody? Is that the man I married? Someone who thinks violence is an appropriate response to an accident. For the first time since Ngozi had met him, Chidi looked uncertain, afraid even. Amara, I'm sorry. I lost my temper. The wedding, the stress, the cost of everything. The cost. Amara stepped closer to him, and despite being several inches shorter, she seemed to tower over him in that moment. This wedding cost 8 million naira. You spent 8 million naira to show off to your friends while my mother lives in Surulere and works as a waitress because your father-in-law's first wife paid her to disappear. She turned in a slow circle, taking in the elaborate decorations, the untouched plates of expensive food, the massive wedding cake that cost more than Ngozi's monthly rent. I want an annulment, Amara said clearly. We'll claim coercion, fraud, whatever the lawyers say. But I'm not staying married to a man who hits women. I won't become my grandmother Victoria, trapped in a marriage with a man who thinks some people are disposable. Chidi's face transformed. The uncertainty vanished, replaced by cold fury. You'll do no such thing. We signed a prenuptial agreement. Your father gave me a seat on his company's board as a wedding gift. Our families have merged businesses worth billions. You can't just walk away because your feelings are hurt. Watch me. If you try to leave me, I'll destroy you. Chidi's voice dropped to something dangerous. I'll make sure everyone knows your mother was a housemaid who spread her legs for a married man. I'll make sure Lagos society knows exactly what kind of family you come from. Your precious reputation will be nothing but gossip and shame. The threat hung in the air. But Amara didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled, a terrible, cold expression that reminded Ngozi eerily of Chief Okafor at his most ruthless. "You're going to regret those words," Amara said softly. Then she reached up and began removing her jewelry, the gold necklace, the elaborate earrings, the bangles that probably cost more than a car. She placed each piece carefully on the table. "Consider these returned. The wedding gift from your mother. I won't keep them." She turned to Ngozi, her face softening just slightly. "I don't forgive you. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'd like to know you. If you're willing." Ngozi nodded, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. "And Daddy," Amara turned to Chief Okafor, "you and I are going to have a very long conversation about exploitation, power, and the choices you made. But not today." She gathered her wedding gown in both hands and walked toward the ballroom exit, her head high despite everything. At the door, she paused and looked back at Chidi. "I'll send someone for my things tomorrow. Don't try to contact me. If you do, I'll make sure every media outlet in Nigeria knows exactly what kind of man you are. The kind who beats women at his own wedding." Then she was gone, leaving behind a destroyed reception, a humiliated groom, and 3 people trapped in the wreckage of decades of secrets and lies. Chidi turned to Chief Okafor, his face twisted with rage. "You did this. You and your whore destroyed my marriage before it even began." Chief Okafor moved faster than a man his age should have been able to. His hand caught Chidi by the throat, slamming him against the wall with enough force to rattle the decorations. "Call her that again," he said quietly, "and I'll make sure you never do business in Lagos again. Do you understand me, boy?" Chidi nodded frantically, and Chief Okafor released him. The younger man slid down the wall, gasping. Ngozi watched it, all feelings strangely detached. Her daughter knew she was alive. Her daughter wanted to know her. But her daughter had just walked away from a marriage because of secrets and violence that all traced back to that night 26 years ago when Ngozi had believed a powerful man's promises. When she believed that love could bridge the gap between a housemaid and a chief. She'd been wrong then. But maybe, just maybe, she could be a mother now. If Amara would let her. What do you think? Can a mother and daughter rebuild after 23 years of lies? Comment below. The compound in Ikoyi was exactly as Ngozi remembered it. High walls topped with electric fencing, manicured gardens with bougainvillea cascading over stone pathways, and the massive colonial-style house that Chief Okafor had bought when his shipping business first made him wealthy. She'd scrubbed the floors of this house once, 26 years ago, while pregnant with Amara. Now she stood at the gates as a guest. 3 days had passed since the wedding disaster. 3 days of non-stop media coverage, blogs, newspapers, Instagram posts, TikTok videos, everyone dissecting the scandal. Okonkwo wedding chaos, mother-in-law waitress beaten at reception, Chief Okafor's secret love child revealed. The stories grew more elaborate with each retelling, some versions bearing almost no resemblance to the truth. Ngozi had called in sick to the hotel, unable to face the stares and questions from her coworkers. She'd spent the days in her small Surulere apartment, replaying everything, wondering if she should have spoken up sooner. Wondering if staying silent for 23 years had been protection or cowardice. This morning, Chief Okafor's driver had arrived at her door with a simple message. "Amara wants to see you. Both of you. Today." Now the gate swung open, and Ngozi walked up the familiar path with Chief Okafor beside her. He'd aged since she'd last been here, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes, but he still carried himself with that same commanding presence that had both attracted and intimidated her as a teenager. "She has every right to be angry," he said quietly as they approached the house. "At both of us. I know. I should have fought harder. Should have stood up to Victoria. Consequences be damned." Ngozi stopped walking, turning to face him. "You were protecting your business. Your reputation. I understood that then, and I understand it now. What I don't understand is why you kept paying me 200,000 naira every year for 20 years. Victoria died a year ago. You could have stopped." Chief Okafor's jaw tightened. "Because you deserved more than Victoria gave you. Because every time I looked at Amara, I saw you. Saw what I'd given up. He paused. I never stopped loving you, Ngozi. Not in 26 years. Don't. Ngozi shook her head. Don't say things like that now. It's too late for us. Is it? Before she could answer, the front door opened. But it wasn't Amara standing there. It was a woman Ngozi had never seen before, early 30s, elegant in a navy blue dress, with a briefcase in one hand. Mr. Okafor, Ms. Okafor, please come in. I'm Chidi Ngozi, Amara's attorney. Attorney? The word sent a chill down Ngozi's spine. They followed Chidinma through the house, past rooms Ngozi remembered cleaning, past photographs on the walls showing Amara growing up, graduating, smiling in family portraits with Victoria beside her. Each photo was a stab of loss, a reminder of all the moments Ngozi had missed. Amara was waiting in the study, seated behind Victoria's old mahogany desk. She'd cut her hair. The long extensions were gone, replaced by a short natural style that made her look younger and somehow fiercer. She wore simple jeans and a white blouse, no makeup, no jewelry except small gold studs in her ears. She looked nothing like the elaborate bride from 3 days ago. She looked real. Sit down, Amara said, gesturing to the chairs across from the desk. Her voice was businesslike, controlled. Ms. Ngozi is here as a witness and legal advisor for what I'm about to propose. Ngozi and Chief Okafor sat. Ngozi's hands twisted in her lap. Nervous energy she couldn't contain. Amara opened a folder on the desk. I've spent the last 3 days reviewing everything. Every document, every payment, every lie. I hired forensic accountants to trace the money. Private investigators to verify the timeline. She looked up, her eyes hard. Do you know what I found? Neither of them answered. I found that Daddy paid you exactly 4 million naira over 20 years. 200,000 annually, like clockwork, deposited into an account Victoria didn't know about until her cancer diagnosis last year. Amara's voice remained steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she turned pages. I also found that Victoria's will left everything, the house, the investments, her personal fortune, to me. Not to Daddy. To me exclusively. Chief Okafor leaned forward. Amara, your stepmother was a complex woman. She was a monster. Amara's voice cracked like a whip. She took a teenage girl's baby, paid her to disappear, and spent 23 years making sure I believed my mother abandoned me. She orchestrated one of the cruelest domestic betrayals I can imagine, stealing a child from her mother, stealing a mother from her child. Tears welled in her eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. But you know what's worse? Both of you let it happen. You, Mama, took the money and ran. And you, Daddy, chose your business over your child's right to know her mother. Amara, Ngozi started. I'm not finished. Amara stood, pacing behind the desk. Chidi has been calling non-stop. Texting, sending flowers, having his mother come here to beg me to reconsider. He's threatening to sue for breach of contract. Says the prenuptial agreement means I owe his family 20 million naira if I initiate an annulment within the first year. Chief Okafor's face darkened. Let him try. I have lawyers who will.
No.
Amara stopped pacing. No more lawyers fixing things. No more money making problems disappear. That's how we got here in the first place. Money and power, and people like you thinking you can buy solutions to human problems. The room fell silent. Chidinma, the attorney, made notes on her tablet, her face carefully neutral. Amara returned to her seat. Here's what's going to happen. Mama, you're going to quit your job at the Oriental Hotel. I've already arranged a management position for you at one of Daddy's shipping companies. Full benefits, salary of 2 million naira annually, with a company apartment in Victoria Island. Ngozi gasped. Amara, I can't accept. You can and you will. Consider it 23 years of child support. Amara's voice softened slightly. You gave up your life because you thought you had no choice. I'm giving you a choice now.
Take the job.
Let me help you. Let me know you. Tears streamed down Ngozi's face. I don't deserve. Maybe not. But I deserve to have a mother who isn't struggling to survive. I deserve to build a relationship with you without worrying that you're working yourself to death in a hotel. Amara's own eyes glistened. If you want that relationship, if you're willing to try. Yes, Ngozi whispered. Yes, of course I want that. Good. Amara turned to her father. As for you, Daddy, you're going to transfer 50% of your company's shares to Mama. Effective immediately. Chief Okafor stood, so fast his chair fell backward. Amara, that's fair. Amara cut him off. It's fair. You built your empire while she raised your child alone in poverty. You maintained your reputation while hers was destroyed. You've had 26 years of success built partially on her sacrifice. Time to pay the real cost. The board will never accept. The board doesn't have a choice. Mummy Victoria left me 60% of her personal shares in the company. Combined with my own holdings and what you're about to transfer to Mama, we'll control the majority. You'll still be CEO, still have your position. But Mama will be an equal partner. The implications crashed over the room like a wave. Chief Okafor stared at his daughter, seeing, perhaps for the first time, how much she'd inherited from both her parents. Ngozi's quiet strength and his own ruthless business acumen. This is revenge, he said quietly.
No.
Amara's smile was sad. This is justice. There's a difference. Chidinma cleared her throat. I have the paperwork ready for signatures. Mr. Okafor, if you contest this, Amara is prepared to go public with every detail. The affair, the payoffs, the manipulation. Given current media interest in your family, that would be unfortunate for your business relationships. It was a threat wrapped in legal language, but a threat nonetheless. Chief Okafor looked at Ngozi, something complicated passing across his face. Respect, maybe, or resignation. Fine, he said finally. Draw up the papers. Amara's shoulders sagged slightly with relief. Thank you, Daddy. Then her phone buzzed on the desk. Her face went pale as she read the screen. What is it? Ngozi asked. Amara turned her phone around. On the screen was a video, grainy, taken from someone's phone at the wedding. But it wasn't the confrontation with Chidi. It was earlier. Much earlier. It showed Amara in her dressing room before the ceremony, talking to someone off camera. And what she was saying made Ngozi's blood run cold. I know what I'm doing. Once we're married, once the business merger is complete, I'll destroy him. He has no idea who he's marrying. No idea what's coming. The video cut off. Below it, the caption read, Amara Okafor's secret plan exposed. More to come. #wedding scandal #revenge wedding. Chidinma leaned over to look. Where did this come from? I don't know. Amara's hands shook. That was a private conversation with my wedding planner. How did someone? Her eyes widened. Unless she wasn't really a wedding planner at all. What are you talking about? Chief Okafor demanded. Amara looked up at her parents, fear written across her face. I hired someone to help me plan revenge against Chidi. For things he did during our engagement. Things I never told anyone about. She swallowed hard. But if that video gets out, if Chidi sees it before I can control the narrative.
Her phone buzzed again.
Another message. This time from an unknown number. Saw the video. Very interesting. We need to talk about your attempt to defraud my son. Meet me tomorrow, or I release everything to the media. Mrs. Okonkwo, Chidi's mother. The woman who'd stood silent during the wedding disaster now held ammunition that could destroy them all. Drop a like if you saw that twist coming. What do you think Amara was planning? Comment your theories below, and don't forget to subscribe. The Okonkwo family estate in Banana Island was even more ostentatious than Chief Okafor's compound, a gleaming white mansion with columns that belonged in ancient Greece, not modern Lagos. Ngozi sat in the back of Chief Okafor's Mercedes, watching the gates swing open, feeling like she was entering enemy territory. Because that's exactly what this was. You don't have to come, Amara said from the front seat. She'd insisted on facing Mrs. Okonkwo alone, but Ngozi and Chief Okafor had refused to let her. Whatever this confrontation brought, they would face it as a family. A broken, complicated, damaged family, but a family nonetheless. We're coming, Ngozi said firmly. After 23 years of hiding, of letting others make decisions for her. She was done being invisible. Whatever she has, whatever she wants, we face it together. The front door opened before they could knock. Mrs. Okonkwo stood there, tall, elegant, her silver hair styled perfectly, wearing traditional iro and buba in deep purple. She looked like royalty receiving unwelcome guests. Chief Okafor. Miss Okafor. And her eyes swept over Ngozi with barely concealed disdain, the former housemaid. How democratic of you to travel together. Mrs. Okonkwo. Chief Okafor's voice was cold. I believe you have something that belongs to my daughter. Belongs? Mrs. Okonkwo laughed, stepping aside to let them enter. I have evidence of fraud, Chief. Evidence that your daughter entered into marriage with my son under false pretenses with the explicit intention of destroying him financially. I hardly think that belongs to her. They followed her through a foyer decorated with expensive art, original pieces that probably cost more than most houses in Lagos, into a sitting room where Chidi waited. He looked terrible. Unshaven, eyes red-rimmed, still wearing yesterday's clothes. A man unraveling. When he saw Amara, something desperate flickered across his face. Amara, please.
Just talk to me.
We can fix this. There's nothing to fix. Amara's voice was steady, but Ngozi could see her daughter's hands clenched into fists. You hit my mother. You threatened me. You showed me exactly who you are. One mistake. Chidi stood, agitated. One moment of losing my temper, and you're willing to throw away our entire future? Sit down, Chidi. Mrs. Okonkwo's command was sharp. Her son obeyed immediately, and Ngozi saw the dynamic clearly. This was a man who'd been controlled by his mother his entire life. Probably why he'd been so quick to violence when challenged. He'd learned from watching his father, who stood silently in the corner, diminished somehow in his wife's presence. Mrs. Okonkwo opened a laptop on the coffee table. Let's discuss the video, shall we? The one where Amara explicitly states her intention to destroy my son after their marriage. She pressed play. Amara's voice filled the room, clear and damning. Once we're married, once the business merger is complete, I'll destroy him. He has no idea who he's marrying. Where did you get that? Amara demanded. From the woman you thought was your wedding planner. Funk Adeyemi. Mrs. Okonkwo smiled coldly. Except her real name is Funk Okonkwo. Chidi's cousin. The woman he was sleeping with 3 months ago. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Amara actually stumbled backward, caught by Chief Okafor's hand on her arm. What? The word came out strangled. Chidi's face had gone from desperate to panicked. Amara, it wasn't serious. You were cheating on me with the woman I hired to plan our wedding? Amara's voice rose with each word. You were sleeping with your cousin while telling me you loved me? While planning our future? She's my second cousin, not even. That's not the point.
Chidi was on his feet again.
You were planning to destroy me. You married me to take revenge for something. Because I found out about Funk. Amara screamed. The composed woman from yesterday was gone, replaced by raw fury. I found text messages 2 months before the wedding. Saw photos. Evidence of your affair going back 8 months. 8 months while you were proposing to me, planning our life together, pretending to be faithful.
Ngozi's head spun.
The domestic betrayal and infidelity in this marriage ran deeper than she'd imagined. So, you decided to marry him anyway? Mrs. Okonkwo's voice cut through the chaos. To go through with the wedding knowing he'd been unfaithful? That sounds like fraud to me. Entrapment. You deliberately entered into a contract under false pretenses. He cheated first. Amara shot back. And you could have called off the wedding. Instead, you chose revenge. Mrs. Okonkwo's smile was predatory. Now, here's what's going to happen. You will remain married to my son. You will publicly retract any claims of abuse. It was a misunderstanding, an accident, a moment blown out of proportion by emotions. You will restore his reputation, and your family will honor all business agreements made before the wedding. Or, Chief Okafor asked quietly, or I release this video to every media outlet in Nigeria. I have copies of text messages between Amara and her real wedding planner, the one Funk replaced, discussing plans to bankrupt my son after the marriage. Plans to expose his business deals, to sabotage his contracts. Mrs. Okonkwo leaned forward. I'll destroy her reputation so completely that no man in Lagos will ever look at her again without thinking cheating spouse and gold digger. The silence that followed was suffocating. Ngozi looked at her daughter, the child she'd given up, the woman she barely knew, and saw her trapped exactly the way Ngozi had been trapped 26 years ago. Cornered by someone with more power, more money, more connections. History repeating itself. No, Ngozi heard herself say. Everyone turned to stare at her. No, you won't. Mrs. Okonkwo raised an eyebrow. I beg your pardon? You won't release anything. Because if you do, I'll tell everyone the real story. Ngozi stood, her legs shaking but her voice growing stronger with each word. I'll tell them about how your son beat a waitress at his own wedding over spilled wine. How he threatened his bride when she tried to leave him. How your family knew he was having an affair with his cousin, but said nothing. Who would believe a former housemaid over me? Mrs. Okonkwo's disdain was palpable. Everyone. Amara had moved to stand beside Ngozi. Because I'll confirm every word. And I have my own evidence. She pulled out her phone, pulling up photos. These are from 6 months ago. Bruises on my arms where Chidi grabbed me during an argument. A split lip from when he accidentally elbowed me. I documented everything. Chidi's face drained of color. Amara, those were accidents. 3 accidents in 6 months. Amara's laugh was bitter. I stayed because I thought I loved you. Because I thought you'd change. But when I found out about Funk, I realized you'd never change. That's when I decided if I couldn't stop the wedding without public disgrace, I'd make sure you paid for what you did to me. She turned to Mrs. Okonkwo. So here's my counteroffer. Grant me an annulment, no contest, no prenuptial enforcement. Or I go public with everything, the affairs, the abuse, the manipulation. And unlike your video of me talking to a wedding planner, my evidence includes hospital records from when I claimed I fell downstairs. The room went very still. Mr. Okonkwo, who'd been silent until now, finally spoke. Chidi, is this true? Dad, she's exaggerating. Is it true? Mr. Okonkwo's roar shook the windows. Did you put your hands on this woman? Chidi's silence was answer enough. Mr. Okonkwo turned to his wife. Give her the annulment. Absolutely not. The business merger alone is worth. I said give her the annulment. Mr. Okonkwo moved toward Mrs. Okonkwo with something dangerous in his eyes. Our son is an abuser, a cheater, and you want to force a woman to stay married to him to protect our reputation? What kind of mother are you? The kind who protects her family's interests. Mrs. Okonkwo stood toe-to-toe with her husband, unafraid. Unlike you, I understand that in Lagos, reputation is everything. We lose face over this. We lose business. We lose business. We lose everything we've built. Then we lose it. Mr. Okonkwo's voice dropped. I won't force a woman to stay with my son after what he's done. I won't become that kind of man. The admission hung in the air. Ngozi recognized something in Mr. Okonkwo's face. Shame, regret, the weight of past sins. She wondered what his own story was, what domestic betrayals he'd witnessed or perpetrated. Mrs. Okonkwo stared at her husband like she'd never seen him before. You're serious? Completely. She turned slowly to look at Amara. The calculation in her eyes was visible, weighing options, measuring consequences, deciding which path led to the least damage. Fine, she said finally. The annulment will be granted. But neither party speaks to the media. No interviews, no tell-all stories, nothing. We release a joint statement saying the marriage was entered into hastily and both parties agreed to dissolve it amicably. And the prenuptial agreement? Chief Okafor asked.
Void.
As if the marriage never happened. Mrs. Okonkwo's mouth was a thin line. But I wanted in writing that your family will never pursue legal action or public defamation against us. Agreed. Amara said immediately. Draft the papers. I'll sign them today. Chidinma, The lawyer who'd been silent throughout finally spoke. I'll need to review any documents before my client signs them. Of course. Mrs. Okonkwo moved toward the door, her posture rigid with suppressed fury. I'll have my attorneys send everything over by end of business today. Now get out of my house. They didn't need to be told twice. Ngozi, Amara, and Chief Okafor headed for the door. As they passed Chidi, Amara stopped. I did love you, she said softly. Despite everything I did. I hoped you'd become the man you pretended to be. But you can't be someone you're not. She paused. I hope you get help, Chidi. I hope you figure out why you think violence and infidelity are acceptable. Because the next woman deserves better. Chidi looked up at her with tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I know. But sorry doesn't undo what you did. Amara turned and walked out. They were silent until they reached the car. Then Amara collapsed against Ngozi, sobbing. Not the controlled tears of someone trying to maintain composure, but the broken crying of someone who'd been holding everything together for too long. Ngozi wrapped her arms around her daughter for the first time in 23 years and held her while she cried. Chief Okafor stood nearby, his own eyes wet, one hand on Amara's shoulder. I was so scared, Amara gasped between sobs. So scared of being alone, of admitting I'd made a mistake, of everyone knowing I chose wrong. You're not alone, Ngozi whispered. Never again. I promise. They stayed like that in the driveway until Amara's tears subsided. Until she could breathe again. Until she could stand on her own. When they finally got in the car, Amara's phone buzzed. She looked at the screen and her face went pale again. What now? Chief Okafor asked, exhausted. Amara showed them the message. It was from an unknown number, just 2 lines. I have information about Victoria Okafor's death. It wasn't cancer. Meet me tomorrow at Federal Palace Hotel, 2 p.m. Come alone, or I go to the police. Below, it was a photo attachment. When Amara opened it, Ngozi gasped. It was a medical report dated 3 weeks before Victoria's death. The cause of death listed wasn't cancer. It was poisoning. Hit that subscribe button now. Do you think someone murdered Victoria? Drop your theories in the comments below and share this with someone who loves a good revenge story. The Federal Palace Hotel lobby was filled with the usual Saturday afternoon crowd, expatriates meeting for business lunches, Lagos elite conducting deals over expensive wine, tourists snapping photos of the colonial architecture. Amara sat alone at a corner table, her hands wrapped around an untouched cup of coffee that had long gone cold. Ngozi and Chief Okafor watched from across the lobby, far enough to give Amara privacy, but close enough to intervene if needed. They'd argued for an hour about whether Amara should meet this mysterious person alone, but she'd been adamant. If someone has evidence that Mummy Victoria was murdered, I need to hear it, she'd said that morning. And if it's a trap, I need you both safe. Now, watching her daughter sit there, shoulders squared, chin up, trying to look braver than she felt, Ngozi's heart ached with a fierce protective instinct 23 years too late. There, Chief Okafor whispered, nodding toward the entrance. A woman had entered, late 50s, hair pulled back in a severe bun, wearing a nurse's uniform under a light jacket. She looked around nervously before spotting Amara and walking over. Ngozi strained to hear their conversation, but the lobby noise made it impossible. She watched Amara's face instead, shock, disbelief, horror passing across it in rapid succession. The nurse pulled out a folder, sliding papers across the table. Amara read them, her hand flying to her mouth. Then she was standing, nearly knocking over her chair, saying something urgent. The nurse shook her head firmly, gathering the papers back. Something's wrong. Ngozi started to stand, but Chief Okafor caught her arm. Wait. Amara said to wait. But Amara was already walking toward them, her face ashen, the nurse following reluctantly behind. Mama, Daddy, this is Nurse Obioma. She worked at Victoria's hospice. Amara's voice shook. She needs to tell you what she told me. They moved to a private room the hotel manager arranged, one of the business suites, empty on a Saturday. Once the door closed, Nurse Obioma spoke quietly, her accent marking her as from the East. Mrs. Victoria Okafor did not die from cancer complications, she said simply. She died from arsenic poisoning administered over several weeks. Small doses mixed into her medication. The words hit like bullets. Chief Okafor sank into a chair. That's impossible, the doctors said. The doctors saw what they expected to see. A cancer patient deteriorating, experiencing organ failure, systems shutting down. But I noticed inconsistencies. Symptoms that didn't match her cancer progression. So I took samples, blood, urine, and had them tested privately. Nurse Obioma opened her folder, showing lab reports with highlighted sections. Arsenic. Consistent doses over at least 6 weeks before her death. Not enough to kill quickly, but enough to ensure she never recovered. Why are you coming forward now? Ngozi asked. Victoria died a year ago. Because I was scared. Nurse Obioma's hands trembled as she closed the folder. Scared of who did this, and what they might do to me if I spoke. I kept the evidence hidden, tried to forget. But then I saw the news about your wedding, Miss Amara.
Saw your face.
And I realized you look so much like your mother. The real one. The one Victoria kept photographs of hidden in her room. Amara leaned forward. Victoria had photographs of my mother? Many. In a locked drawer in her nightstand. I saw them once when I was changing her bedding, and the drawer fell open. Pictures of a young woman holding a baby. Letters that were never sent. Victoria would take them out sometimes when she thought no one was watching. She'd cry over them. The image of Victoria crying over photos of Ngozi and baby Amara was so unexpected, so contradictory to everything they knew, that no one spoke for a moment. Who did it? Chief Okafor's voice was rough. Who poisoned her? I don't know for certain. But Victoria's medication was kept in a locked cabinet. Only 3 people had keys: Victoria herself, myself, and... Nurse Obioma hesitated. And who? Amara pressed. Her sister, Mrs. Adiz Obi. She visited every day. Always wanted privacy with Victoria. Always insisted on administering the evening medications herself. Said it was her duty as family. Chief Okafor's face had gone gray. Adiz. Dear God. Why would she? Victoria changed her 2 months before she died, Nurse Obioma said. I heard them fighting about it. Mrs. Obi was furious that Victoria left everything to Miss Amara instead of splitting it with the extended family. She said Victoria had no right to give a housemaid's bastard the family wealth. The slur hung in the air like poison itself. Ngozi felt rage building in her chest, not just at the words, but at this entire web of greed, betrayal, and murder that had ensnared all of them. Why should we believe you? Chief Okafor asked. You have evidence of poisoning but waited a year to come forward? That makes you complicit. I know. Nurse Obioma's voice broke. I've lived with the guilt every day. But I have a family, children, and university. Mrs. Obi is a powerful woman. Her husband is a state governor. I was terrified of what would happen if I accused her. What changed? Amara asked. Mrs. Obi called me 3 days ago. Said she'd seen the wedding scandal on the news. Said she wanted to hire me to work for your family, Miss Amara, once things settled down. Nurse Obioma looked directly at her. She asked very specific questions about your health, your routines, your medications. And I realized she's planning to do it again. The implications crashed over them like a wave. Adiz Obi had murdered her own sister to prevent Amara from inheriting. Now, with Amara controlling Victoria's entire estate worth hundreds of millions of naira, she was planning another murder. We go to the police, Chief Okafor said immediately. Right now. We turn over all evidence. It won't work. Amara's voice was flat. Her husband is Governor Obi. You think the police will investigate? They'll bury it, and then we'll be targets. She'll know we know. So, what do we do? Ngozi demanded. Let her get away with murdering Victoria? Let her threaten you. Amara stood, pacing the small room. Ngozi saw her daughter's mind working. The same calculating intelligence that had planned revenge against Chidi now turned toward a murderer. We need proof she did it, Amara said slowly. Not just lab reports from a year ago. We need her confession, her motive, something that even Governor Obi can't make disappear.
How?
Chief Okafor asked. Amara turned to Nurse Obioma. You said she called you 3 days ago. Did she leave a number? Yes. Call her back. Tell her you're interested in the job. Tell her you can start immediately. Amara's eyes were hard. And tell her you know about certain medical irregularities in Victoria's care. That you'd be willing to help with similar situations if the price is right. Understanding dawned on Nurse Obioma's face. You want me to record her? Get her to admit what she did. Can you do it? Amara asked. It's entrapment. It won't hold up in court. It doesn't need to. Chief Okafor had caught on to his daughter's plan. It just needs to be convincing enough that we can threaten to release it publicly. Even Governor Obi can't protect his wife if there's video evidence of her confessing to murder. That's blackmail, Nurse Obioma whispered. That's justice, Amara corrected. She murdered my stepmother. Tried to deny me my inheritance. And now she's planning to kill me. I won't wait for her to succeed. Ngozi grabbed her daughter's arm. Amara, this is dangerous. If Adiz suspects anything, then we have to make sure she doesn't suspect. Amara looked at each of them in turn. I know this is risky. I know we could fail. But doing nothing means I'm just waiting to be poisoned like Victoria was. I won't live like that. The determination in her voice reminded Ngozi painfully of herself at 19, before life and circumstance had beaten the fight out of her. She'd lost that fire somewhere in the years of domestic work, of survival, of accepting less than she deserved. She wouldn't let her daughter lose it too. What do you need us to do? Ngozi asked. Amara smiled, grateful, fierce. Daddy, you'll arrange a family dinner. Tomorrow night. Say it's to celebrate my annulment from Chidi, to show family unity after the scandal. Invite Auntie Adiz and Uncle Governor. Make it impossible for them to refuse. And me? Ngozi asked. You'll be there as my mother. As an equal member of this family. Amara squeezed her hand. It's time everyone knows exactly who you are and what you mean to us. They'll be scandalized, Chief Okafor warned.
Good.
Let them talk. Let Adiz see that we're united, that we're strong. Amara turned to Nurse Obioma. And you'll wear a wire. During dinner, you'll pull Adiz aside, tell her you need to discuss the job opportunity privately. Get her to talk about Victoria, about how it was done. What if she doesn't confess? Nurse Obioma asked. Then we try something else. But I think she will. Amara's smile was cold. From what you've described, Adiz is arrogant. She got away with murder once. She thinks she's untouchable. That's when people get careless. They spent the next hour planning every detail, the dinner menu, the guest list, the recording equipment, the backup plans if Adiz became suspicious. By the time they left the hotel, night had fallen over Lagos, the city lights glittering like false stars. In the car, Amara leaned her head on Ngozi's shoulder, a simple gesture that meant everything. I'm scared, she admitted quietly. Me too, Ngozi said. But we're going to get through this. Together. Mama? Amara's voice was small, younger than her 23 years. Did Victoria really keep photographs of us? Did she really cry over them? Ngozi considered lying, offering comfort. But her daughter deserved truth. I don't know, baby. Victoria was complicated. She did terrible things, taking you from me, forcing me to leave, lying to you, for 23 years. But maybe she loved you in her own broken way. Does that make what she did forgivable?
No.
But it makes it human. Ngozi kissed the top of Amara's head. We're all just humans making terrible choices and trying to live with the consequences. They drove in silence for a while. Then Chief Okafor's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went rigid. What? Ngozi asked as he hung up. That was my head of security. Someone broke into the house in Ikoyi tonight. They took Victoria's personal effects, her journals, her locked drawer, everything from her bedroom. Adiz, Amara breathed. She knows we're looking into Victoria's death. She's destroying evidence. Or she's preparing to run, Chief Okafor said grimly. Then we need to move faster. Amara pulled out her phone. The dinner needs to happen tomorrow. No more delays. As they pulled up to the Ikoyi compound, they saw police cars parked outside, Lagos State Police, their lights flashing blue and red in the darkness. Chief Okafor's head of security met them at the gate, his face grim. "Chief, there's a problem. The intruder, they didn't just take Victoria's things. They left something." He held up a photo printed on regular paper. It showed Amara from that morning, sitting in the hotel lobby, meeting with Nurse Obioma. Someone had drawn a red X over Amara's face, and written in the margin, in elegant handwriting, "See you at dinner, dear niece. We have so much to discuss." What happens at the dinner? Will Adiz confess, or will she strike first? Drop your predictions in the comments and smash that subscribe button. You won't want to miss the finale. The dining room in Chief Okafor's Ikoyi compound had never looked more beautiful or felt more like a trap. Crystal chandeliers cast warm light over the mahogany table set for 12, the finest china and silverware gleaming like weapons. Ngozi stood near the window in a navy blue lace dress Amara had bought for her that morning. Expensive, elegant, the kind of clothing she'd never imagined wearing. The kind of clothing that announced she belonged here. "You look beautiful, Mama." Amara appeared beside her, resplendent in gold traditional attire with matching geli headwrap. She'd dressed for battle, Ngozi realized, armor disguised as celebration. "I'm terrified," Ngozi admitted.
Good.
"Fear keeps us sharp." Amara squeezed her hand. "Nurse Obioma is wearing the wire. Daddy's security team is monitoring from his study. If anything goes wrong, nothing will go wrong." Chief Okafor joined them, imposing in his burgundy agbada. "We have a plan. We stick to it." The doorbell chimed, the first guests arriving. Over the next 20 minutes, the room filled with family members who'd avoided the wedding scandal. Cousins, uncles, aunts, all carefully selected by Amara. Witnesses who could be trusted or manipulated, depending on what tonight required. And then Adiz Obi swept in. She was everything Ngozi expected from a governor's wife. Tall, imperious, dripping with gold jewelry that probably cost more than a house. Her husband, Governor Obi, followed behind looking uncomfortable in his traditional attire, clearly wishing he was anywhere else. "Chief Okafor." Adiz's voice carried across the room. "How wonderful of you to host despite the recent difficulties." Her eyes swept over Amara with false sympathy. "And, dear Amara, such a shame about the marriage. But better to discover these things early, yes." "Indeed, Auntie." Amara's smile was sweet poison. "I've learned so much recently about discovering the truth. About how things aren't always what they seem." Something flickered in Adiz's eyes. Wariness, perhaps. Or recognition of a challenge. Then Adiz's gaze landed on Ngozi, and her face transformed into open contempt. And this must be the infamous housemaid. How democratic to include the help at a family dinner. The room went silent. Every eye turned to watch this confrontation, the kind of public disgrace that would fuel Lagos gossip for months. Ngozi felt the old shame trying to rise, the instinct to shrink back, to apologize for her existence. But then she felt Amara's hand slip into hers, warm and steady. "This is my mother," Amara said clearly. "Ngozi Okafor. And she's not just invited, she's family. More family than some people who share our blood." The implication hung heavy. Adiz's smile became brittle. "Of course. How lovely. Such a modern approach to family structure. Shall we eat?" Chief Okafor gestured everyone to their seats, defusing the tension. "We have much to celebrate tonight. Amara's freedom from an unfortunate marriage, family unity, and new beginnings." Dinner began with the usual pleasantries, discussions of business, politics, Lagos traffic. The kind of surface conversation that meant nothing while everyone waited for the real drama. Ngozi picked at her jollof rice, her stomach too knotted to eat. Across the table, Nurse Obioma sat quietly in civilian clothes, introduced as a family friend. The recording device hidden in her bracelet was active, ready. Halfway through the main course, Amara stood, tapping her glass for attention. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. These past weeks have been difficult, discovering truths about my family, about my marriage, about who I can trust. She looked directly at Adiz. Auntie Adiz, I'm especially grateful you could join us. I know Mummy Victoria would have wanted you here. Adiz's fork paused halfway to her mouth. Victoria was my sister. Of course I came. Such a devoted sister, Amara continued, visiting her every day during her illness, helping with her medications, making sure she was comfortable in her final weeks. Someone had to care for her properly. Adiz set down her fork carefully. The hospice nurses were adequate, but Victoria deserved family attention. Speaking of nurses, Amara gestured to Nurse Obioma. This is Obioma Ease. She worked at Victoria's hospice. I invited her tonight because she has such interesting stories about Mummy's final days. The color drained from Adiz's face. She looked at Nurse Obioma with dawning recognition and fury. You, Adiz breathed. Me. Nurse Obioma confirmed quietly. The other dinner guests looked confused, sensing drama but not understanding its source. Governor Obi leaned toward his wife. Adiz? What's going on? Nothing. Adiz recovered her composure quickly. Simply surprised to see someone from the hospice here. How unexpected. Obioma reached out to me recently. Amara continued conversationally, though her knuckles were white around her wine glass. She wanted to discuss some medical irregularities she noticed during Mummy's treatment. Fascinating stuff, really. About how certain medications can mask other substances. About how someone could administer poison slowly enough that it looks like disease progression. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Governor Obi stood abruptly. This is inappropriate dinner conversation. Sit down, Chief Okafor commanded, and something in his voice made even a governor obey. Let her finish. Amara pulled out a folder, removing laboratory reports and laying them on the table. These are blood tests from Victoria's final weeks. Tests that show arsenic. Not a lot, just enough to ensure she never recovered from her cancer. This is slander. Adiz was on her feet now, her face twisted with rage. How dare you accuse me of? I haven't accused you of anything, Auntie. Yet. Amara's voice was ice. But I am curious why you broke into this house last night and stole Victoria's personal effects. What were you looking for? What evidence were you trying to destroy? I don't know what you're talking about. The security cameras don't lie. Chief Okafor pressed a button on his phone, and a TV mounted on the wall flickered to life. Footage showed Adiz entering the house the previous night, moving through Victoria's room, taking items from the drawers. You gave me keys years ago, Adiz said desperately. I was just collecting some of Victoria's jewelry that was rightfully mine. The jewelry you're wearing tonight? Ngozi spoke for the first time, surprised by the steadiness in her own voice. Those pieces belong to Victoria. I recognize them from photographs. You've been stealing from your dead sister for months, haven't you? Adiz turned on her with venom. You have no right to speak in this house. You're nothing but a whore who... Careful. Amara's voice cracked like a whip. That's my mother you're addressing. And unlike you, she's never murdered anyone. You can't prove anything. Adiz looked around the table wildly, seeking support. This is a conspiracy to deny me my rightful inheritance. Victoria promised me. Victoria left you nothing because she knew what you were, Amara interrupted. She changed her will 2 months before she died because she suspected you were poisoning her. She documented everything in her journal, the journal you tried to steal last night but couldn't find because I'd already removed it. Amara pulled out a leather-bound book, open to marked pages. My sister comes daily with her false concern and her poisoned kindness, she read aloud. I feel myself fading, but not from cancer. Something else. Someone else. But I won't give her the satisfaction of knowing I know. Let her think she's clever. Let her believe she'll inherit everything. She'll learn the truth when I'm gone, and Amara gets it all. The words hung in the air like an indictment. Adiz stood frozen, her face a mask of trapped fury. Victoria knew, Amara continued softly. She knew you were killing her, and she made sure you'd get nothing. Made sure I'd inherit everything so you'd have to watch a housemaid's bastard control the family wealth. That was her revenge against you. She deserved it. Adiz finally broke, the words exploding from her. Everything Victoria had should have been mine. I was the elder sister. I sacrificed my own life to help her marry Chief Okafor, to help her family rise in Lagos society. And how did she repay me? By giving everything to you, a child who wasn't even born from a legitimate marriage. Governor Obi grabbed his wife's arm. Adiz stopped talking, but she was beyond stopping, beyond caution. The domestic betrayal and years of resentment poured out like poison finally released. I did what had to be done. Victoria was dying anyway. The cancer would have killed her eventually. I just expedited things. Made sure the inheritance didn't waste away on hospital bills and experimental treatments that wouldn't work. Adiz turned to Amara with hatred burning in her eyes.
And you.
You ungrateful child. You should have died with your whore mother years ago instead of being raised like royalty in a house that should have been mine. The confession rang through the dining room. Every guest sat in stunned silence. Nurse Obioma's hand went to her bracelet, still recording every word. Governor Obi had gone completely pale. Dear God, Adiz. What have you done? The fight seemed to drain from Adiz all at once. She looked around the table, seeing the recording phones now openly pointed at her, seeing her husband's horror, seeing her own destruction reflected in every face. You can't use this, she said desperately. This was entrapment. It won't hold up. In court? Maybe not. Amara stood, gathering the folder and journal. But in the court of public opinion? In Lagos society? On social media? Every blog, every news outlet, every WhatsApp group will have this confession by morning. Unless, Chief Okafor added, you agree to our terms. Adiz looked up with desperate hope. What terms? You sign a full confession, written, legally witnessed. You return every piece of Victoria's jewelry and property you've stolen. You establish a trust fund of 50 million naira in Victoria's name for women's healthcare in Lagos. Amara ticked off each point on her fingers. And you leave Nigeria.
Permanently.
Go live in your husband's village, go live abroad, I don't care. But you never come back to Lagos. Never contact this family again. And if I refuse? Then we release the recordings. The journal. Everything. Amara's smile was sharp. You'll be arrested for murder. Your husband will lose the governorship, can't have a scandal like that attached to his name. Your children will grow up knowing their mother is a murderer. Your entire legacy will be infidelity, greed, and poison. The choice was clear. Social exile or criminal prosecution. Wealth and freedom in obscurity or prison and disgrace. Adiz looked at her husband, but Governor Obi had turned away, unable or unwilling to meet her eyes. The man who could have protected her with his power had already decided she wasn't worth the political cost. I'll sign, Adiz whispered. I'll sign your confession. Good. Chief Okafor gestured to his lawyer, who'd been waiting in the next room. The papers are ready. You have 1 hour to review and sign. Then you leave this house, and you never return. As Adiz was led away, diminished, defeated, her designer clothes and expensive jewelry suddenly looking like a costume, the other guests began to leave in a flurry of shock and whispered conversations. The scandal would still spread, but now it would be controlled. Managed. The story of a greedy sister caught and punished, not a murder that went unsolved. Finally, only Ngozi, Amara, and Chief Okafor remained in the dining room surrounded by the remnants of the dinner. Half-empty plates, cold food, wine glasses reflecting the chandelier light like blood. Is it over? Ngozi asked quietly. This part is, Amara said. She looked exhausted suddenly, the adrenaline of confrontation fading to reveal the wounded woman beneath. Adiz will sign. She'll leave. Justice will be served. Not justice, Chief Okafor corrected. Vengeance. Justice would be prison. This is pragmatic. It's what Victoria would have wanted, Amara said. No public trial, no media circus that would destroy our family reputation along with Adiz. Just quiet removal. Exile. Ngozi reached for her daughter's hand. And what do you want, Amara?
Not for the family. For you.
Amara was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, tears tracked down her cheeks, ruining her makeup. I want my mother back. The years we lost. The relationship we could have had. She turned to Ngozi. I know we can't get back the past. I know forgiveness doesn't happen overnight. But can we try? Can we start now and build something real? Yes, Ngozi whispered, pulling her daughter into her arms. Yes, baby. We start now. They held each other while Chief Okafor watched with tears in his own eyes, a family broken and rebuilt in the span of a week, held together not by blood alone but by choice and forgiveness. An hour later, Adiz signed the papers and left with Governor Obi in a black SUV, their taillights disappearing into the Lagos night. Nurse Obioma accepted a check for 2 million naira, payment for her courage and her silence, and left with promises to start a new life far from the Okafor family drama. The house finally went quiet. Ngozi stood in the room that had once been Victoria's, now empty of its stolen treasures and dark secrets. Amara joined her, followed by Chief Okafor. She kept photographs of us, Amara said, showing Ngozi the hidden stash they'd found. Dozens of pictures of Ngozi holding baby Amara, of Ngozi's smile before life had hardened it, of a young woman who'd believed love could conquer everything. She was more complicated than I gave her credit for, Ngozi admitted. Still cruel. Still wrong in what she did. But maybe she loved you in her way. Does that make what she did forgivable? Amara asked the same question from before. This time, Ngozi had a different answer.
No.
But it makes her human. And maybe that's enough. Maybe knowing that even people who hurt us are complicated and broken helps us move forward. Wise words, Chief Okafor said quietly. Ngozi, I know I have no right to ask this after everything. After all the years and all the pain. But would you consider, could we possibly?
No.
Ngozi's answer was gentle but firm. What we had was 26 years ago. We're different people now. I won't be your second chance at redemption. I understand. But, Ngozi continued, we can be friends. Co-parents. Family. Just not lovers. Those days are gone. Chief Okafor nodded slowly, accepting the boundary. Then I'll take what I can get. Amara looked between them. What happens now? To all of us. I start my new job at your father's company, Ngozi said. I moved to the Victoria Island apartment. I learned to be a mother to a grown daughter. And I try to forgive myself for the choices I made. I finished my degree, Amara added. She'd been in her final year at the University of Lagos when the wedding happened. I take control of Mummy Victoria's companies. And I figure out who I am without a husband defining me. And I learn to be a better father and employer, Chief Okafor finished. I support both of you however I can. And I try to build a legacy that's about more than money and power. They stood together in the empty room, 3 people bound by blood and mistakes and hard-won grace. To new beginnings, Amara raised an imaginary glass. To truth, Ngozi added. To family, Chief Okafor completed. However complicated, they left the room together, turning off the light on Victoria's memory and all the secrets it had held. Outside, Lagos stretched before them. Millions of people, millions of stories of domestic betrayal and forgiveness, of infidelity and second chances, of revenge and redemption. Their story was just one among many, but it was theirs. And for the first time in 23 years, Ngozi Okafor walked out of Chief Okafor's house not as a dismissed housemaid or a guilty secret, but as a woman with her daughter's hand in hers and her head held high. She was finally, truly home. Thank you for following this emotional journey. If this story touched your heart, please hit that like button. Subscribe to African Echoes for more powerful stories of love, betrayal, and redemption, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment below telling us what part impacted you most. Was it Ngozi's sacrifice, Amara's strength, or the twisted revenge against Adiz? We read every comment. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss our next story. From all of us at African Echoes, Thank you for watching, and remember, every family has secrets, but the truth will always find its way to light. See you in the next story.